Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to the program. Welcome to the dining room table, Denis Walter.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. It's lovely to catch up.
Well, I've long been a fan of yours, and I listen to your program regularly on 3AW. How long have you... I heard you the other night say that you'd been at 3AW for 25 years.
25 years it is. I started off doing... I was on with Ernie doing a segment on a Friday. Yep. Which was always great fun because Ernie and I were really close. And I started off when I got fired from the music station, the sister station to 3RW. Yeah. But they said, oh, no, we're going in a different direction. Anyway, I was fired at 12:05 after I'd done my morning shift. Mm. And then I was driving to Ballarat and I was on the Westgate Bridge, and the general manager who had just fired me, he said, okay, now you're hired. You're coming to 3AW.
That's a strange roundabout way to do it.
Well, the person who was the witness to the firing, yes, was also the sort of manager of the music station. So he didn't want him to sort of have a bit of a feel for where his mind was at. So he waited 10 or 15 minutes while I was working out how to clear a few debts and all that sort of stuff. And he rang and said, oh, by the way, I want you to come to 3RW, so let's sit down next week and work it out. So I started doing Saturday nights, still doing my bits with Ern. And then what happened then? Then I went to weekends, did the weekend break. Yeah. And then when Ernie retired, I did 11 years or nearly 12 years of 3RW afternoons. And then they asked whether I'd be interested in going to nights on a 5-year locked away contract. So I said yes, but other than money, down the track, some remote broadcasting because, I live 90 k's from Melbourne. So then COVID hit, and I'm still doing a fair bit of it from home and the rest of it in the studio.
Well, you see, you can't pick that. It's very good. Whatever the system you're using is very, very good. But
Thank you.
How did it work in the beginning? Because I remember you on Johnny Young's Young Talent Time. And you were...
I'm glad your memory's working that well.
Anyway,
that's 55 years ago.
55 years ago. Well, you've made a great success, even going into news reading. I've got to introduce you to Caroline because Caroline is one of your greatest fans.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Mr. Walter.
Mr. Walter, please.
Well, I'm looking at a picture of you.
Really?
Dennis, yes, it's is that an album cover?
1974, I think.
1974, and it's called By Request.
Oh yes, and I looked like I was channeling Mark Holden. I had the carnation in the lapel
and the big collars.
All the big collars, and some of the shots on that were taken, I think, in London.
Ah.
And I looked like I had a magnificent wardrobe, but nearly all of it was borrowed.
Yeah, look, we make do in the beginnings, don't we? I mean, we have to.
Yep, we do. And look, one of the reasons when I was young, I always wanted to do talk radio, and I always wanted to be involved in news, which came about via a segment I did on Channel 9 Melbourne. And then I ended up doing some fill-in weather, and then the opportunity came up for regional to do to be a newsreader. And you sort of, if you don't think about these things and work towards them, they'll never happen. And thankfully, it all has for me, which is great.
No, I think that the philosophy that you've got is absolutely right. What I used to do, I would have maybe 4 or 5 jobs going. I'd apply for anything that was around. I'd do any audition. And then there was one time when I would have to be sacked, 5 times before I'd even feel it. And you develop that total feeling of insecurity. It comes with the business, I'm afraid.
Yes, it does, and it's very hard to mentally get above it. And I've found that you usually go through periods where you're very, very comfortable with everything, and then for whatever reason, one day suddenly you sort of feel, yeah, not sure the contract ends soon. You know, you go through stages.
Sitting at home, or what have you got at home? A studio or what?
I'm sort of under the house in what used to be a not a garden shed, but where you would keep tools and whatever. But it's fully carpeted and it's perfect acoustics. So and I can't hear anything. So if it's raining outside or if there was an emergency vehicle going past, I wouldn't hear a thing. Can't hear a thing.
We have birds, and on a Friday around about this time, the rubbish cart comes by, and you can hear.
Excellent.
Yeah. Touches of reality. I love it.
But the important thing, Jeremy, have you put your bins out?
Oh yes.
Good.
Look, there's a whole regiment. There's a regime that you've got to follow, otherwise the municipal police will come round and knock on your door. I'm sure they come and check what you've put in the bins.
Oh, they do in Geelong, I can assure you.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Bureaucracy. Sorry?
Bureaucracy.
Yeah, well, what they do is I think they do a region and they keep peeking in your bin, and then they put stickers on saying some of this isn't correct. If you don't conform, you will you won't get your rubbish collected, and then they disappear for 3 years.
How do we get ourselves into these terrible situations? I don't know. You've toured with some fantastic people as well. You toured, I think I remember, with Liberace.
I don't know. I was to go away with Liberace, and it didn't work out. And he was a delightful human being, but I was young. I went to Los Angeles, and look, it hadn't been. In all fairness to him and his management, the people in Australia organising that actually hadn't done their full homework, because when I landed in Los Angeles with the idea of becoming his support following on from Jamie Redfern, he'd already started using the Mike Curb congregation. So I was sort of sitting in LA, lonely and young, and thinking, well, where do we go from here? So it didn't quite work.
No, the Mike Curb congregation, I haven't heard of them for years. Burning bridges, wasn't it?
I think so, yes.
No,
it burnt mine.
But Mike Curb congregation. Mike Curb, I think, was the head of CBS Records.
He was. Yes, he was. He was in a very elevated position. I didn't actually know the history of him, and I didn't take much interest after that. I've got to be quite honest.
No, I don't blame you. But there's no point wandering around. Where are you going, Caroline?
Getting Tony some cream.
Oh, we're having scones and cream, you see, because it's afternoon tea week.
Oh, beautiful.
And we won't be here in the afternoon, so we've got to make hay while the sun shines.
Can you post mine over to me? I'll eat it about Wednesday next week.
Yeah, if you're lucky. The mail is not that quick. Do you ever get to...
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
South Australia?
Occasionally. I've been over there for different shows, but mostly sort of private corporate type things. Yeah. I love South Australia. I always have, and had many happy years there performing at the Chrysler Canteen. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. I've never performed there, but I don't know what they... Oh, yes, I do know what they turned it into. They turned it into a thing called the multifunction polis.
Oh, gee, that sounds serious.
Yeah. They turned it in... I never knew what it was, and I don't think they did either. But it sounded good.
Yes, it certainly did. But at lots of shows at the Arts Centre, all those things. I just love Adelaide, and one of the things that's become really evident about how well planned Adelaide is that you're on a grid, and Melbourne and Sydney are just chronic with traffic problems, just unbelievable these days. And Melbourne has actually outdone Sydney as far as congestion.
Yeah. Well, they haven't helped because of the bicycle lanes and all the nonsense they go on with the political correctness. And I don't know where their brain is.
It is a bit odd because there are more and more cars on the road and there are less lanes for them to travel in.
Yeah, and it's all being funneled into a smaller, narrower area, which of course is going to lead to congestion.
Yep, and when you get to peak hour and there are buses picking up people on main streets, it just causes so much problem. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. You're on a grid and you're happy.
Well, yes, it's a sensibly laid out city, and some say beautifully laid out, a little bit like a cemetery.
But they're taking away road room as well.
They are here. It's getting the same way. We had trams years and years ago. And then they got rid of the trams and put in buses. Then they got rid of the buses and then they put the trams back. There's not a lot of thinking going on, it would seem.
No, but I've got a theory on this. What I believe is that people get elevated into government-type jobs, and unless they're seen to be doing something differently, then they probably won't get the allocation in their budget. So they'll come in with sweeping changes that aren't necessarily the best thing for the community.
Now, you were a singer, obviously, before you went into radio.
Yes.
How did you start in that?
I went on Young Talent Time as a contestant who lost. They invented the honourable mention, put me through to the finals. I lost again. And then a year after that, because I really wanted to be in media entertainment, I went on New Faces in Melbourne, and I won the heat and then won the final. And then Young Talent Time rang me and said, we don't want you to be part of the team, mainly because I was too old and couldn't dance. And then they said, can you do requests? And that was the beginning of the recording career. That was the beginning of the career. And then, thankfully, over time, all the other bits and pieces have happened.
Yeah, because you've got a great voice. I don't know whether the voice is because of the singing, but it is a great voice. You're very blessed.
Well, my father was contested in Sun Arias and all that stuff, so it definitely came from Dad.
Yeah. Was he a professional singer?
No, because he had 4 children, the youngest of whom came along 8 years after the other 3, and that would be me.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I was a mistake, but anyway, I'm here still and everything's going well. But Dad didn't have the opportunities. There weren't, as a classical singer, just there weren't the chances, and he already had a family.
What was your first record?
It was called, first album was called Incredible Voice of Denis Walter. I was in a velour suit from Freeze on Hoddle Street in Abbotsford or Collingwood, and it was the whole thing was done in about 8 hours. The whole album, and when you listen back to it now, it's got a few problems, but it sold well.
Yeah, and I look back on the early days of television and radio that seemed to be so much. There's a lot of creative people then that we don't seem to have now. People like Tommy Tico and
yes,
they were very even people like Bobby Lim. I mean, they lived and breathed entertainment and live shows. Why don't we have live shows anymore?
Well, the closest thing really to what we've got as a live show television-wise is probably Front Bar, because it's hilarious and it entertains people. But there aren't the sort of the avenues, although they still have them in America.
Yes, indeed. I don't know who your favourite would be of those Tonight Show people, but
my favourite was Jay Leno.
Yeah, mine was Letterman. I thought he was very clever.
He's clever, and I like Johnny Carson in the old days.
Yes, indeed, yeah. And the other thing about American television is that, like you being at 3AW for 25 years, they understand that the longer you're there, the more valuable you are.
Except when it came to poor Jay Leno.
Oh, well, Jay Leno had enough, hadn't he?
No, before that, when they gave him 5 years to move the other one on, and then... and he didn't succeed, so Jay was brought back.
It's not very often that you get 5 years' notice.
No. I've just been in the longest contract I've ever had, and that's 5 years.
Yeah. Are you going to do another one?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I love what I do, and and I'm a fidget, so the concept of retirement just is, I find, abhorrent.
No, I won't retire either. I think, I'll work till I'm fertilizer.
well, hopefully that's not any time soon.
Well, even then, I hope to be useful. I hope to go into the garden and do something useful. But anyway, Geelong, I'm glad to hear that you've got a studio there, because I knew that you lived there, and then I thought about the commute and how difficult that must be on a daily basis. But it's not so bad if you can live where you want to live and work where you probably have to.
Yes, it's look, the technology is so brilliant these days that you can be somewhere. But what was the name again? Not Casey Kasem, Rick. Oh, I used to do American Top 40.
Oh, yes.
And evidently even back in the...
You don't mean Dick Clark?
No, not Dick Clark. Oh, it'll come to me. But he had a little satellite dish, and he could do his broadcast from anywhere, and no one knew where he was.
That could be useful.
Yes. I could be on Hamilton Island or somewhere.
Yeah. What do you do for hobbies, or you're too busy really to have a hobby?
Both myself and my wife both love cooking, and it's one of the few times. I mentioned that I'm a shocking fidget, but when I'm cooking, I can waste hours just concentrating on that, and there's no other aspect of my life where I just get lost in the moment. So it's a terrific hobby, and I love cars.
Oh, good. What have you got?
I've got a 1984 John Player Special, the black ones with the gold writing on the side.
Oh, yes.
I've got an old XJ6 Jag.
Yes. What colour? What colour?
White with like the camely coloured leather interior. And also, my mate who used to live across the road from me, Shane Hunter, he started Just Cars, and he sold out to Kerry Packer, and then stayed out of that industry for the length that he had to. Yeah. And then he got bored, and he went back into it and outsold what he had sold. He outsold them within 12 months. And then Rupert Murdoch wanted to buy him out, but he didn't want to be a 49% shareholder. He wanted majority. Anyway, he lived over the road, and he had about 10 cars in this giant shed at the back of his property, and he asked me one day whether I wanted to buy this old white Mercedes 1967 250S. It's not a rare car. It's not something that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's white. It's got the white steering wheel. It's got the red leather, and it's just a gorgeous old thing.
Well, look, I'll have to take a picture of the one I've got. I've got do you remember when John Laws sold all his cars?
Yes.
I got a couple of them. One of them was a Mercedes 220 SE Cabriolet.
Oh, beautiful.
And I think John had left it out in the weather because the seats had gone, they were sagged and the leather had cracked up. So I replaced the interior with red leather.
Beautiful.
So it's what are you handing me? Oh, Dolly Parton's Jag.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Yes, I've got Dolly Parton's Jag. I'd forgotten about that. Caroline reminds me.
Hey, Dolly, what Jag did Dolly have?
It's an E-Type.
Oh, lovely.
Series 3 V12, and it was originally.
I found this on the web for Series 3 verse 12.
Siri wants to join in. Now, why would she suddenly pop up out of my telephone like that, Tony?
Because you've mentioned series.
Oh, series. Oh, of course.
Don't keep saying it.
Isn't that interesting? They are listening all the time.
Yes. What about sometimes when you mention something or whatever, and the next time you go online, up comes the the car brand you were talking about, or the biscuit you were talking about?
Yeah, spooky. Yeah. It's sinister. I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but
yes.
Tony Denton is with me as well.
Hi, Dennis. Love
Hello,
your show.
Tony.
Love your show, by the way.
Thank you.
If you want to really annoy all your listeners, accidentally say, "Hey Google," and everyone's home device will go off.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I need a bit of material for next week, so thank you.
For Wednesday night.
No,
Yes.
Dennis, the reason I love your show, though, you've got such a great variety of guests. You've got the lawyers, the finance people, and just a great balanced show and great callers as well, including Caroline, who's a regular caller.
Ah.
Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. Whoops.
No, that's all right. No, it's just voices. That's something when things are familiar. Isn't that interesting?
Anyway, great job. Well done. And thanks.
Thank you.
There was a time when people in radio had writers. I remember in the early days of 2GB, I think John Laws had somebody who wrote for him. Have you ever done that?
No.
I haven't either. I haven't.
Oh, no. Couldn't stand it. I don't like a lot of what you do is just got to. Well, a lot of it, of course, as you know, is on the run. It's
spontaneous.
Yes. And but probably the one thing that's missing in so many areas of showbiz, which we touched on before, is spontaneity and just off the cuff.
Yeah, because there seems to be a sort of fixation that they have with stand-up comics. Everyone seems to have that as his or her background, and I don't know why. Maybe that's the only way they have become familiar with an audience.
I'm not sure, but you're right. There's an obsession with like you only have to look at all of the sort of panel shows that are on telly, and they're all people who are, for whatever reason, now stand-up comics, and some of them are radio hosts, like music radio hosts, music FM stations, and suddenly they're a comic.
Yeah, Kyle and Jackie O have been brought into Melbourne, so they're obviously thinking. Most of the networks are thinking about how they can save money by networking shows from one city to many cities. Has that Sydney show, which is pretty vulgar, has that Sydney show worked in Adelaide? No, it wouldn't work in Adelaide, but has it worked in Melbourne?
I would look. I've asked people, and I haven't been, and especially in the demographic thereafter, and I still haven't had anyone say yes. I just love it. I'm listening to it every day. I haven't had one person, and I've asked people who are definitely in the audience that they're looking for. So I'd say it's going to be a bit slow, but we'll just have to watch it. But if it's slow, it's a very expensive operation.
Yeah. I don't know. I've only heard snatches of it. I wouldn't certainly go back and purposely look for it.
I've only heard about 20 minutes of it, and there's certainly a lot of money being given away.
Yeah, but you can only buy an audience for so long, and it's vulgar, and I don't think it's entertaining either. And the guy doesn't strike me as being terribly smart. I've never met him, and I really couldn't make judgment because I haven't listened to. You are too nice, Dennis, to say things like that. I know that. I know that. Are you still doing carols at Christmas time? I'm coming up to. I think we're not sure because I did them for Channel O. That's how long ago it was. Yeah. But I think it's my 44th this year. 44th. I used to go down to Nunawading to Channel O to record Blind Date because we'd do 1 week in Sydney and we'd do 1 week in Melbourne. Yeah, well, those were the days. Those were the days. Carols by Candlelight was hosted by Phil Gibbs at Channel O. Phil Gibbs, I know the name, but I can't place the face, Yeah, it's mostly to do with sport, but he always hosted Carols by Candlelight, and it stressed him out to the max. He used to just, because it was sort of an unfamiliar vibe for him, he did an excellent job, but he worried about it in the weeks leading up to it. Oh, yeah, well, if you're not nervous about stuff, you're not on your mettle, I wouldn't think. Are you still reading news? No. When Ernie's, when they offered a takeover afternoon, when Ernie retired, came up, I couldn't do both. I used to do 6 bulletins a day, as well as I was driving from Geelong to Melbourne to do music radio, and then
go to Ballarat, arrive there with about 15 minutes to spare, and then start 6 bulletins between 3 and 6:30, and then drive back to Geelong.
You're hyperactive, overemployed.
Or stupid.
No, I think ambitious. If you could write your own future, what would you like to do? Is there something you haven't done that you would like to do?
I'd like to continue for maybe another 5 years with my radio, but there are lots of things out there. How can I put this? I've been thinking about why people are successful, and I've got a few friends who are successful, not necessarily wealthy, but successful in life. And I reckon I honestly believe it's all to do with focus, and one of them is extremely successful, and he has a bit of a hobby in his late 80s. He's now got probably the world's best collection of MGs, and he's building an MG museum in Geelong.
Wow.
Which is incredible. They're all concourse. They're absolutely sensational. But I had the discussion with him, and I said, "You've been very focused," because he's been very successful in a variety of businesses. And he said, no. And anyway, after about 45 minutes, he said, you're right. I have been focused, and I've been focused all my life. But I've been putting together a talk. I'd love to do more corporate speaking, just to talk about my experiences, because what I realised was when I was travelling in the early days singing, I was always listening to talk radio in Adelaide, talk radio in Perth, talk radio in Brisbane, and particularly Sydney, because I was in the clubs that much. And suddenly I was thinking to myself, well, hang on, I was actually doing quite a lot of work to ultimately end up on talk radio. So that you become what you think about, I think.
Yeah, indeed, you are what you think about. I remember talking to a guy called James A. Fitzpatrick.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This was when I was at 2GB, and when you went outside to interview somebody, you had this really big tape recorder. Nothing like the modern stuff that you can use these days, but I lugged this great big recorder down to Circular Quay, where James A. Fitzpatrick had arrived. I wasn't quite sure who he was. But he was the person who invented the travel log. His catchphrase was, "And as the sun sets in the golden west, we bid a fond farewell to Hawaii or Timbuktu or wherever." And,
I've heard that.
Yeah, and he was an amazing man. And he was just so he knew I didn't know, but he just sort of went along with it and asked himself the questions that I should have been sensible enough to ask him. And he was explaining to me how he had the longest contract in the history of MGM, and how he had managed to put sound on film for the first time, and how he had gathered all these executives together, and he had the silent film, and he was going to record while they rolled the film. He was going to record on a disc the commentary, which would then be played in cinemas. And I don't know, it would have been in, I suppose, the 1920s or earlier. And the first thing didn't go so well, and he explained the second run was better and the third run was perfect. And Sam Goldwyn said, you're hired. And he had that contract all his life. His life. And when I talked to him, he would have been in his early 90s. And I remember asking him, knowing that he was obviously a very, very rich and very, very successful man, I said to him, what's the sum total? Well, if you were going to tell somebody the most valuable thing you could pass on to him or her, what would it be? What's the secret? What's the philosophy? And he said, "Oh, that's simple. That's simple. If you think you can, or you think you can't, you're absolutely right."
Yes, one's as powerful as the other.
Yeah,
negative or positive.
Yeah. I better let you go. You've given us a lot of your valuable time. Your greatest fan over here is going to say goodbye. Have you got a question you'd like to ask, Dennis?
No, but I'd just like to let him know how much we appreciate Wednesday nights in particular. And in fact, on football season, we replay it in the car so we don't have to listen to the football after Darren finishes at midday.
There you go. All right. Well, 3AW is football. Hey, thank you.
Football.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Jeremy, thank you.
No, bless your heart, Dennis. And it's a great honour to have you on the show. Good luck with all you do.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.